Okay, in this first video, we're going to be taking our blank circle, mine is 20 inches in size, and we are going to be painting it all white with a barnwood, like faux barnwood plank style background. So it's going to be lots of fun. So get your white paint, your brushes, and some baby wipes because you're going to need them. Oh, and a ruler. Let's get started. Okay, let's begin. I've got my egg carton, some white matte acrylic paint from Deco Art, and I'm going to be squirting it in my egg carton. Quite a generous amount. I'm actually filling this little egg carton cup up not quite halfway. And then I'm going to take and thin my water out. I don't always do this, but I'm just dipping my brush in the water and then squeezing the excess water off into my egg carton. This is to water down the paint just a little bit because we are painting the entire background of this sign white, and by watering down our paint a little bit, it'll make the application go on much smoother. So I've got like a little, this was just sitting here, little wooden dowel rod. You can also use the opposite end of a paintbrush to kind of stir this up. You want to get it nice and mixed so that there's no clumps, no watery spots. Trying to keep all of mine in the same egg carton because it's spilling over into the next side. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then you're going to need a large size paintbrush. This one is probably a little over 1 inch wide. Mine is kind of stained and dirty. So just get you some white paint on there and start filling in your door hanger. Now don't worry about if this looks perfectly covered. We're not going to worry about that right now. Right now we're just going to worry about getting the entire background covered and be using plenty of paint. Notice I'm only doing a few strokes, redipping in the paint over and over again until I get a nice even coverage. And I'm doing long strokes back and forth. Mine is still very streaky looking. So just make sure you're using long brush strokes and going back and forth and smoothing it out. This is going to take a little bit of time, so this is probably the least fun part of the project. So just stick with it, and then the next part is going to be so fun. And try to enjoy this. Like, don't get all stressed out about this. Painting is not supposed to be stressful. So if you feel yourself getting stressed, I want you to repeat to yourself, Tamara says it doesn't have to be perfect, and you can't judge a project based on step number 1. Wait till you get all the way to the end, and then you can start to judge your project just a little bit, but don't judge too harshly. So as you can see, mine still looks very, very streaky, and I'm having a hard time like getting the entire thing covered without going in 10 different directions, and that's okay. We're just continuously redipping our paintbrush and doing long strokes. Like I said, we're just focusing on getting the entire thing covered. And also trying not to get it on our clothing. Okay. So now that I've got the entire thing covered, we're just going to take our brush, dip it in a little bit of white, and keep doing long strokes back and forth. So just redip in white and keep doing long strokes. This time, now that the entire background is covered, I'm going to try to get my paint to all of my brush strokes going in the same direction. So I'm choosing left to right. And if you feel that drag, like sometimes you'll pull your brush across the paint and the paint has begun to dry. If you feel it grabbing and dragging, stop, dip your brush in just a little bit of water. Don't soak it, but just get a little bit, and then go back to working. So I'm feeling a little bit of drag. You'll also may need a little bit more paint, because if you're using a lot of water, your paint will continue to thin out, and then your background won't be as solid as you want it to be. Now, like I said, we are not going for a perfectly solid white background. We're just getting it as best as we can, and then we're going to do the faux barnwood style planks. So that's going to hide the imperfections of our background. So we're not going to worry about it. As you can see, I'm having to like cover this area here. It's not going over real well. So if you're having a hard time getting it to coat, Cover it with a little bit of paint, dip in some water, and then redo your brush strokes so that they're all going the same way. Kind of like a finishing touch. And just keep working across. I'm running out of paint. I tend to paint a lot faster than most people, so if I get ahead of you, please pause the video so that you don't get overwhelmed and get caught up, and then hit play again. That's why we are pre-recording this, so that you can follow along step by step without feeling overwhelmed or like you're getting left behind. But also feel free to comment and ask questions about the video. That way I can go back later and answer your questions. Oops, I keep dripping paint across the board. So see how this second coat is going on and making the whole thing overall look a little bit smoother. It's because now that we've got the background covered and we're going back over it again, we're getting all of our paint strokes in the same direction. Now, if you have cut your door hanger with a jigsaw, you may wish to paint those rough edges. See the edges there? Those are the edges of mine are black. I don't mind that because mine is a laser cut blank, and I actually like the black burned edge look. But if yours is a jigsaw cut door hanger, you're going to want to paint that outside edge because it will look like raw wood if you do not, and it won't look as finished. So we're going to dry this. If you need to speed your drying time up, just get out a hair dryer, set it to a high heat setting, and don't hold it too close. Just hold it like 6 inches above. Dry the entire thing, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Okay, as you can see, mine is still a little bit streaky. I'm not worried about that. I'm going to keep my brush strokes that we're all going this direction going up and down on my door hanger. So next you're going to need a ruler, and we're going to create lines on our door hanger using our ruler. And then we're going to need some gray and black paint. So I'm going to be using slate gray and just regular plain old black. And we're going to put a little bit of each one into our egg carton. I struggle to get these plastic caps off of these paints sometimes. I'm sure you do too. That's relatable. Okay. So this one is called Slate Gray. Just going to put a little bit of it. We don't need very much at all, just like a dime-sized amount of each one. And you also need to have your baby wipes on standby. So get them out. Go ahead and pull out a baby wipe. Or two. I accidentally pulled out two. And you're going to get a round tip brush. So this is the one that I'm using. See, it's a nice size, got lots of bristles, and they're nice and springy. And we're going to be using that. And then we're going to decide how far apart you want your planks. So you also need a pencil. And I'm not going to measure mine because I'm definitely not a perfectionist. But I'm just going to loosely put mine on here until I like how far apart they are. So let me get those kind of drawn on here. If you want to be perfectionist about it and measure, you can do that, or you can just eyeball them like I'm doing. And if you really want to know how far apart my planks are, I will measure and tell you. Okay, this one is roughly 3 3/4, but the next one may not be. Because when you're talking about barn wood, is barn wood really perfectly the same width anyway? So we're just eyeballing it. And I'm just drawing my lines with my pencil. This gives me a nice guideline to go by for the next step. If you have a yardstick, that might even work better for you because this little 12-inch ruler isn't covering the entire door hanger. I had yardsticks once upon a time, and then I had kids, and then my yardsticks disappeared. They use them to get things out from under couches and refrigerators that slide underneath there, and then I don't ever get them back. Okay, so I've got a little squiggle in that line. Doesn't matter. All right, so as you can see, we've got all of our planks drawn out here. So next, if you've got a old like ruler or yardstick you don't care about, we're going to get a little paint on this. So don't use a new one if you don't want paint on it. Get your line lined up there, and I'm not completely, let's see if you can see this, I'm not completely covering up my line. I'm right next to my line. And then we're just going to get a little bit of gray paint, not a lot, just a little. Actually, let's start up here at the top since my ruler is a little short. And we're going to flatten out our ruler. See, I'm spreading my hands as far apart as I can get to flatten my ruler. And then I'm just going to take and do a quick swipe of my brush down through there. And then we're going to pick it up, slide it down, and do it again. Now, we did not try to do that perfectly. As you can see, it kind of faded away down here. That's fine. When you're doing barnwood, that's what you want. Actually, let's do the same thing, but with a little bit of black. So I'm going to scoot my ruler over just a little bit more, so I'm not exactly where I was before. Get a teensy bit. Do you see how teensy of a bit I got? It's just barely on the edge of my brush. And then I'm going to take and just swipe, swipe. And I'm trying not to do it perfect. I'm trying to get it just a little bit messy. I'm kind of feathering it on, if you will. If you need a term for it, we'll call it feathering. Feathering it on. And then we're going to go to the next one. And we're going to try to move quickly because we want these little lines to kind of stay just a little bit wet for when we do the baby wipe technique. So the faster we move, the better that's going to turn out. So I'm getting just a little bit of gray. And I actually still had a little bit of black on my brush, but I think I need a little bit more. So I'm just moving this yardstick around. We're just using it as a loose guideline to get a straight line. But as you can see, my lines are messy. Please don't go for perfect lines. That's not what we want. Barnwood's not perfect. Okay, spread your hands out and make that line. I'm going to move back down here and get a little bit more black. My lines aren't quite as thick as I want them to be. And I'm not even making these perfect. Like, I know I've said that like 10 times. I feel like I'm repeating myself. But what I'm saying is I don't have one solid black line. You kind of want it to be a little bit messy and like where it's kind of disappearing and starting all over. Just be careful moving that ruler around because you also don't want to get it like all over the door hanger when you're doing that. Because sometimes the paint can get up underneath there and you may end up spreading the paint where you don't want it. So just trace over that line, then get a little bit of black, and trace the line again. I need a little bit of black up here. I forgot to do it with the black. Okay, and then I'm on my last line right here. Get a little bit of gray. Like I said, we want to move quickly so that our paint lines stay. I'm going to go without the ruler down here just for sake of time. We want our paint to stay a little bit wet for this next part. Okay, and while our paint is still wet, we're just going to toss our ruler to the side. We're going to move our egg carton out of the way. This is where the fun part is. Wad your baby wipe up kind of like this, and then just back and forth while the paint is still wet, but go over the entire thing. Do you see what it's doing? It's smearing the paint and transferring it to other areas to create that really cool weathered look. This is so fun. This is like the best part. But you got to work quickly while your paint is still a little bit wet. Now, if your paint, I will show you. Hang on. Let me not get ahead of myself. Just keep wiping until you feel like you've got the appropriate amount. If you feel like you've smeared it too much and it's too dark and you don't like it, fold your baby wipe over to a clean area and pick some of it back up. You might still be able to do that if it's not dry. And kind of keep it, make sure it's all staying going in the same direction. Now look, if you got too much and you don't like it, use your baby wipe like a paintbrush. Dip just a little bit of it in white and then streak your white on top to get the desired look. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm asking as if you can answer me like this is a live video. But do you see what I'm saying? Like we're just streaking a little bit of white back on top to get rid of, and I don't really care how dark this is, but I'm just demonstrating for demonstrating purposes. So if you don't like, if it's too dark, you can always go back and add a little bit of white and just keep building on it until you get the desired amount. Now, if your paint had dried too much and you didn't get enough black or gray transfer, dab just a tiny corner, I mean just a tiny amount on your baby wipe, and then streak it on and just use it like a paintbrush and just keep streaking it until you like the amount that you've got. So I've pretty much got mine. It's almost completely dry, so there's not really any more transfer or moving of it, and I actually really like the way this looks. So let's move on to the next part. Well, hang on. Okay, so in the next part of our video, we will be painting the lemons, but look how pretty this is, guys. You could do it this direction, or you could do it this direction. And up close in the video, it probably looked like it had too much gray or too much black, but when you hold it back here, it's like the perfect amount. It's so pretty. So I'm really excited about how this is turning out, and I hope you are too. In the next video tomorrow, we'll be painting lemons, so stay tuned.